See if we have. So that's you got something coming out of this speaker, huh, Mark? You hear a little amplification? A little bit. I just want to know if it's live. Is something coming out of it? Out of this? Okay. It doesn't have to be a lot yet. I haven't turned up the volume. I just wanted to make sure it was live. One what? If you were hearing something amplified, it was coming from there. Good.
Yeah, there seems to be a little bit of a time lag. It sounded like an echo.
Yeah.
I can hear your voice.
Yeah. I think it'll be okay. All right. I think we're getting there. Okay. Did you say you want to wait till 2:15?
Yeah.
I've talked to the people though too a little bit.
Yeah. Should I say something? Yeah.
That'll give me a chance. 1 second, please. That'll give me a chance to make sure we have the volume on that.
Yeah, that's a good
We
idea.
can have a monitor speaker for people to hear themselves.
Okay.
And this for the room. So I'm gonna.
Do you want
and
to
that's the thing for you, Marina.
Do you want me to put it at the counter or something?
Yeah, as long as you don't forget it.
Yeah. I mean, it might be safer there.
Okay.
What do you, I mean,
I'll try not to do it.
It's a phase, you know.
Yeah, Neely, that's been a real labor of love for bringing the goat.
I guess you can I've got five. I'm not the kid.
how's it going?
You know, teasing or whatever. No.
Hello? Hello? Eric, how's this? Want me to keep talking? Hello?
2022.
Mic check. Mic check. Okay. Okay. So just to kind of let everyone know that we're going to be starting in a few minutes. We're checking the mic and stuff. I'm just chatting right now, test out the mic and
The human voice.
yeah, human voice. And also, we're not going to start right at 2. We're going to start a little bit after. So anyone that doesn't know, there is a table of free stuff out there that David Meltzer was publishing and editing. Tree Publications, and then also a couple books of David's, and the interview book he did with a bunch of beat folks. So, and the stuff out on that table, please have at it if you would like it. And thanks for coming. And anyone have any questions, I guess, since I'm up here? We're not starting yet. Yeah, the table's outside to the left. Yeah. Eric, you want me to keep talking?
No, that's okay. I have to think about why I'm not getting you through that.
Okay, cool.
I haven't turned on those speakers. I bet that's all.
Oh, yeah.
So now I need to turn my volume down. I think that's all it is. They're
Okay.
plugged in, but they're not turned on.
Okay. there's a bit of feedback. Maybe I'm sitting in front of it, but maybe this should be. Yeah, that might be it. Like I think maybe the voice and the monitor is kind of too much. Yeah. And also, like, how does it work if I stand? Okay. Like what people want to do. I don't know. Yeah, we'll leave the chair. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, I got it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good.
And I mean, I could sit or stand. You do whatever you.
Well, I think we can move it back and forth because I'm going to come up and do brief intro.
I wasn't being, lectured.
You see, I'm not even sure how that works. No. I mean, yes, we'll do it. We'll have some meetings.
Actually, I'd like to live part of my life. I like the system.
We have a meeting scheduled.
Let's see. Okay, so we should be all set now to get going. Can everyone hear me okay? Kinda? Okay. Is this a little bit better? Yeah, okay. Julie, would you like to stand or sit when you come up? Stand? Okay. Yeah. Okay. It'll pick up. Okay. So does that seem... Okay. On other things, I should definitely listen to Marina, and do. She's on top of it. It's good stuff. Okay. So we're actually going to get going here. As everyone kind of settles down, finds their seats and everything. So we're here to celebrate David Meltzer's Rock Dow, which is a text written roughly 64 or 65-ish. He was 28 when he was writing this. And not much has changed from back then, pretty much as is. I edited it. Lithic Press put it out. Thanks. Many cheers to Danny and Kyle at Lithic Press in Fruita, Colorado. They're yeah, exactly. The Gregory Corso book that's due out is Golden Dot, which will be very lovely. Yeah, it'll. As seen in Castle Grayskull. It's true. Okay, so the first reader we're gonna have come up is Julie Rogers. Okay. Sounds like everyone kind of knows Julie, so I don't really have to introduce her much. But she's a poet in her own right, and without her trust and support, Rock Dow wouldn't have happened. So I really appreciate it very much. Okay, so Julie, please come on up, and I'll do short intros for all the readers. Yeah, see what the mic height is doing for you.
How's that? Is that all right?
Good.
He seems a bit high.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's good.
Okay, can I even stand here? How about right here? I'm loud anyway. It's amazing to be here and to see all of you, and thank you so much for coming. For me, this is kind of a memorial service. Very emotional. I'm very happy that this book has come about, and David would be thrilled. I mean, I'm so sorry he can't see this, but we'll feel it for him. And I want to make some thank yous before I do anything else. Definitely to Danny Rosen and Lithic Press for this beautiful book. And Patrick, the extraordinary editor, and Meltzer archivist. Patrick and Nick Whittington and Marina Lazzara helped for months archiving the work, at which point I pulled out the box that had been like forbidden for any eyes, and I said, we got to get this stuff out because I knew Rock Dow was in that box. And Kyle Harvey for a really wonderful cover. It's just beautiful. So it's been 5 years and 3 months since David passed. I know, it's like, really? Yeah. It's the longest 5 years I've ever endured, I'm sure, but it seems like it was just yesterday. Yeah. And a very ironic thing is that just this last week, I finished dispersing David's library. If anyone had ever been to our home, it was like being in a library. And after 5 years, I felt like I just need to change things. You know, it was very difficult, but it feels good. And a lot of people helped with that. Jean Berson and George Rozzo and Patrick, and also Jeff Macer, very helpful. And my friends and family, so I really appreciate that too. And just recently, Theo pointed out, a very dear friend of ours, that in a note about David Meltzer that I wrote, I didn't mention David's medical stuff. And it's so weird because it never occurred to me, because when I met him, he had crutches, and that was David. But he actually went through a lot while we were together, not to mention all the many years before that. So I just want to say that he was so courageous, such an example, you know. And as I get older, I remember him saying, when I asked him, how do you deal with the pain? He goes, I just don't focus on it. that's a really good piece of advice. So I really want to acknowledge that David just never let anything stop him. A really, truly remarkable man. And I also want to thank Eric Whittington. David used to get up here and you know, do big, you know, speeches, buy books. And Eric, thank you for having this here today. This is really the perfect place to have a launch for this book. So I have to drink some water. I'm going to read a couple excerpts. And I'm leaving it to other people to read David's words because it's just a bit much for me. But I really appreciate that he has this excerpt in here from the I Ching and from the Tao. Because I think that for David, his spiritual practice was writing in a lot of ways, though he did have really eclectic interests in spiritual things. And first I'm going to read this on page 21. Tao has declined for 1,000 years because the people valued their emotions. When there was wine, they refused to drink, and they set their hearts on fame in this world. The reason our bodies are precious, is it not because we have but one life to live? How much time is left in this one life? It is like sudden lightning, like a boiling cauldron through 100 years. Regarding this self, what accomplishment is there? The Tao Chen, circa 372 to 427 AD. That's called Old Wisdom. And then I love that he has this excerpt from the I Ching, hexagram 16. When I looked at this, I go, oh, yes. And when David was romancing me, he let me know that he was very interested in the I Ching because I told him I was. So I recognize this right off.
That's an old line.
So this is introduction on page 25. Hexagram 16, the image. Thunder comes resounding out of the earth, the image of enthusiasm. Thus the ancient kings made music in order to honor merit and offered it with splendor to the supreme deity, inviting their ancestors to be present. And this is the commentary. When at the beginning of summer, thunder, electrical energy comes rushing forth from the earth again, and the first thunderstorm refreshes nature, a prolonged state of tension is resolved. Joy and relief make themselves felt. So too, music has power to ease tension within the heart and to loosen the grip of obscure emotions. The enthusiasm of the heart expresses itself involuntarily in a burst of song, in dance and rhythmic movement of the body. From immemorial times, the inspiring effect of the invisible sound that moves all hearts and draws them together has mystified mankind. Rulers have made use of this natural taste for music. They elevated and regulated it. Music was looked upon as something serious and holy, designed to purify the feelings of men. It fell to music to glorify the virtues of heroes and thus to construct a bridge to the world of the unseen. In the temple, men drew near to God with music and pantomimes. Out of this, later, the theater developed. Religious feeling for the creator of the world was united with the most sacred of human feelings, that of reverence for the ancestors. The ancestors were invited to these divine services as guests of the ruler of heaven and as representatives of humanity in the higher regions. This uniting of the human past with the divinity in solemn moments of religious inspiration established the bond between God and man. The ruler who revered the divinity in revering his ancestors became thereby the Son of Heaven, in whom the heavenly and the worldly met in mystical contact. That was translated by Wilhelm Baines. And for those of you who know the I Ching, it's the old yellow one. And then I have a little poem. Oh. We stood on this stage so many times. I've had a lot of fun on this stage. So this is called Exodus of a Library for David. A toast to words, shelves of volumes of pages of thoughts read out loud. Toast the curious mind wandering alone, silent in a chair, bent over more knowledge. Toast his lifelong dig across the spines, beyond the table of contents, books stacked in a chaos of cases packed with chops, composing rhymes with truth, spoof clown savant dog barking for good. He lived his hearty story out on crutches, signing off with his signature, a face with heart, a date and initials, lines drawn. Toasting David Meltzer, who said, "Yes, I read them," pulls my heart through everything we found, everywhere we've been, and all we loved. David's living onward. His library was thereby offered today to the world of cell blocks shut tight at San Quentin Prison, with wishes that the guys will soon find something completely different to open and read. Let's toast to David. Thank you, really, and enjoy the reading.
Thank you, Julie, for that. And thank you for giving extra thanks to everybody, because you covered some folks that I didn't, and complete names as well, which is great. And definitely to Eric for hosting us. If anyone wants to come in, they can come in more. And just to let everyone know, there is a restroom over here along the hallway. So the next reader is going to be Garrett Caples. And Garrett's an editor at City Lights, and he edited books by David. And the one thing I've been very aware of in this process was that a lot of people could have edited this other than me, and Garrett is one of those people. So Garrett, come on up. Thank you.
Alrighty. You know how to do the mic. Yes. This mic is great. Don't you listen to her? Little shout out to Serpent Power there. I won't, the excerpt I have to read, there was no way to really shorten it, so it's a little long, so I'm not going to say too much. I just want to say I love David. He was like my dad and like my son. He was hilarious. He was one of the greatest relationships I've ever had with another person. So I want to read the last bit of this book. It is an account of David and his first wife, Tina, and the Robert Holly and Robert's wife, whose name is escaping me at the second, went to Went to see the Stones in 1965 at the Civic, and it was before Satisfaction even. So like David's really already ahead of the curve. Like they do a early American tour in that spring, and they're playing places like the Civic, and then in the fall they're playing, you know, arenas and stadiums because Satisfaction has happened. So David was right there at the beginning, as always. Big Daddy Tom Donahue, a portly, bearded disc jockey, steps onto the stage and announces in a rich, solemn voice that if the audience does not quiet down and clear the aisles, the Rolling Stones will not appear. He reminds us of a black day in Washington when the Rolling Stones were forced to leave the stage after one song because the audience was so unruly. The audience moans and begins quieting down. It doesn't make any difference, he explains, whether or not they perform, they'll still get paid. Big Daddy asks the security guards and policemen to come forward to guard the stage. I turn around to look at the 6 security guards and 1 policeman who stand at the back of the auditorium, at ease, unmoving. Big Daddy asks them again to please come up front. Finally they come, and some of them get upon the stage, while others stand before it. They are augmented by a group of special ushers. The security guards all look to be in their mid-50s, and one of them looks like it might be his last night on the force before retiring tomorrow on his pension. With this show of force, Big Daddy brings on the Rolling Stones. The shock of their physical presence silences the audience for a half second before they give out with a dome-exploding yell. Before they start their first song, the aisles are filled with girls, ecstatic, flashing their cameras, straining to be seen, waving, weeping, and screaming. Big Daddy gets back on stage and screams into the mic to warn the mob to clear the aisles, and no more disturbances or the show will be over. The girls return to their chairs, herded by the ushers. The Rolling Stones begin. The lead singer is Mick Jagger, who plays no instrument. His hair is long, his lips are full. He looks like a frog, a girl squeals. And he moves with full awareness of his male function. He is seducing his audience, moving his body, swaying, hip thrusting, finger snapping. More personnel clutter the stage. The audience is getting louder, gathering its courage, summoning up the Alamo defense spirit. And girls begin edging back down the aisles in packs as guards, ushers, policemen spread out to form a barrier to the stage. They come like gorillas, like archers scaling walls, rushing down aisles until the aisles are a solid mass of people. Charging girls, screaming their delight, laughing, crying, talking to the cosmos, pinching each other, repeating a ritual word over and over and over. Mick, 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 Mick! His voice is no longer heard. It is the sound of the crowd. Just the guitars and drums can be heard accompanying the audience. And it's no longer important. The girls know the words to all the songs. Brian Jones, a fragile-looking youth, has long blonde hair to his shoulders and plays rhythm guitar. Brian, 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 Brian! His blue eyes rest in puffy eye pouches. He looks as if he has just arisen from a deep sleep. Oh, he's so beautiful, so beautiful! Oh, look at him! He smiles lovingly and remotely at the Medusa mob before him and flicks the tip of his tongue between his lips, which causes a head-cleaving shriek. I love you, Charlie! I love you! I love you! Oh, Charlie! 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 They are beginning to assault the stage and are being pushed back by the officers and ushers. Oh, Keith! Keith! Smile! Here I am! Smile! One usher starts clapping his hands in time with the music and gets some of the audience to clap with him to divert their frenzy. A pretty girl, through a miracle of devotion and God-arranged gravity, gets on the stage and throws herself at Bill Wyman, the electric bass player, who chews gum while he plays. The weeping, adoring girl is peeled off of Wyman, who through it all looks straight ahead, keeps playing, and doesn't miss a chew. A blonde girl in her mod-style dress breaks through the barrier and onto the stage to claw into Mick Jagger like a hawk to a rabbit. And he keeps singing as she is yanked away by the old security guard, whose freckled-age hand she bites. And while being dragged off stage, she loses one of her shoes. The old guard returns to his post, licking his bitten hand. We stand on the seats of our chairs in order to see the stage because the whole audience is standing, or they're in the aisles. Looking down at the audience is quite a sensation. Faces absorbed in intense anguish of not being able to reach their gods. Black streaks of eyeliner in the salty wash. A girl behind us has been screaming since the Stones came on. Earlier I told her to scream softer, which she did for a few seconds, but then went right back to her red alert holler. I watch the audience from my chair, and it is like being in an airplane flying above a dense pack of clouds. Keith Richards, the lead guitar player, ducks a heavy object thrown at him from a fan, but keeps playing. The Rolling Stones, unafraid, continue singing and playing. Another blonde girl Broad jumps onto the stage and, yelling triumphantly, grabs a hold of the drummer, Charlie Watts. It takes 2 guards to haul her off the stage, so violent is her response to the rude removal from such sacred ground. Standing on my chair, the mob packed together, celebrating, worshipping. Their yelling, roaring, screaming, wailing returns me to a sense of the god realm. I see them turned into centaurs and flies, goats and griffins, larks and leopards, peacocks and phoenix, snails and scorpions, woodpeckers and unicorns, which makes me remember a morning in Big Sur when it was early, and I walked to a brook to cool my feet and to splash my face so I could wash the sleep off its skin. And upon ferns were groups of muddy-colored triangles, which I didn't understand nor recognize because I live in cities, and I shook a fern branch and stood back. A small group of monarch butterflies spread their orange black-bordered wings and took flight up into the clear blue sky. Their wings were stained glass windows the sun shines through. By a surprise of misdirection, the Rolling Stones vanished from the stage immediately following their song. The girls closest to the exit entrance door are so stunned at the speed of escape, they cannot move until it's too late. The doors clank shut and are barred from within. The rest of the audience is unsure as to whether it is over or not. It is. People start leaving. Girls climb on the stage to scavenge sacred relics, a cigarette butt smoked by a Rolling Stone, or a button torn off of Mick's jacket, some evidence, some memento. We pass 3 teenage girls seated together in an empty row of seats. They are embracing each other, weeping uncontrollably, sobbing like 3 widows at a wake. Their sorrow is so large, their loss so great, all they can do is hold to each other and let it come forth. One of them looks up, her eyes red-rimmed, to see me watching her cry, and I turn away, sorry to have intruded upon her grief of gods who die as quickly as they are born. The concert is over. That is a hell of a piece of writing.
I can't help but say one of the advantages of being old and having been born in England was that I used to see the Stones in smoky basement clubs in Soho. And what I try and do, as maybe for others of us who are getting older, is when things get tough and it's hard to do, just remember there were a lot of good times that got you to where you are now.
Yes. Amen to that.
Most definitely amen to that. Thank you, Garrett. That was terrific. It was nice to hear David's voice come through a little bit. Man, you kind of tying this up on me. Garrett, you made it way too tight. Yeah, I will, in a minute maybe, and we'll see. So I'll just keep talking. It's okay, and I don't know the exact height that we wanted at, but I just couldn't loosen it. Your grip was too strong. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's tough. Well, okay, that's good. Just because Genny will come up and then we'll figure it out. It was, yeah, for us both, really. It was. Oh man. Okay. So I just wanted to comment briefly. One great thing about that concert at the end of Rock Dow that Garrett read the very end of the book. It's a whole chapter, and the early part, Lou Welch makes an appearance, and he's driving Tina and David to the concert along with the Hollies of Oyez Press. And they were the press that originally was going to do Rock Dow and then was unable to, unfortunately, at the time. So I just wanted to note that. And also the outside on that free table, that book of interviews, that's the great Lou Welch interview where he just kind of unloaded on David nonstop. It's not really a Q&A, it's just kind of Lou talking, which is a delight. If no one's ever read it, you should read it. Yeah, the Louinet, exactly. Okay. So next up is Genny Lim. And thank you, Genny, for coming. Okay. So Genny's a wonderful poet, and she taught at New College along with David and Neely, who's also here.
And that's why he had to lower this. He knew I was coming up. So kind
Is
of
it
you.
low enough for you?
Yeah. I think that's cool. Yeah, I want to thank Julie for inviting me. Oh. Oh. Whoa, yeah, so that.
I thought something.
Okay. To the side, like this. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's great to see.
Oh,
Okay,
Thank you,
Good?
everyone.
okay. Yeah, it sounds okay to me, but I'm not listening to myself. So, but thank you,
think it's
Julie,
okay.
and thank you all of David's friends and
It should be like this.
fans.
Oh, no.
No, leave it alone. This is like those radio broadcast shows. The mic, it's a hot mic. Well, I think we all agree that Rock Dow is a masterpiece. I mean, the writing is so insightful and brilliant. His insights about the ritualistic aspects of rock stardom penetrate to the core of its market-driven machinery with its books, pornography, movies, all ornamental of the quest to fill the void left by God's death. We demand the quick and abundant life and death of other gods and heroes. The Orphic equations are unavoidable. Like a modern-day motley scholar come de Tocqueville, Meltzer's descriptions of rock culture as a revolt that seeks order through disorder is precisely the Tao of anarchy and youth that ignite the burning flame of fame and exacting Faustian extinction in its bargain. The revolution is over as soon as your face is printed on a sweatshirt and worn by the young. The artist as god and fan as initiate is the ancient ritual and reenactment of what Mircea Eliade described as the myth of the eternal return. And that's a brief review I had written that I was trying to get published, excerpt of Rock Dow. But I'm going to read from 26 and 27 because his cultural understanding of the ritual of rock, American rock, is what we brought to the rest of the world. I kill a fly. Transistor radio blares in my head through a plastic earphone. Love is an itching in my heart, sings Diana Ross in The Supremes. Non-sacramental wine mixes with bread and cheese in my innards. The man who lives above me paces back and forth. I am clogged, and I sit here before a writing machine to tell you how God haunts these godless times, but I do not pray, nor do I submit to ancient traditions, rituals whose legacy of invisible and visible conclusions remain meaningful guides to me and in my search for God. The search for God is the search for self, for the meanings within and beyond man. Rock and roll, narcotics, comic books, pornography, movies, TV are all ornamental to the quest. To fill the void left by God's death, we demand the quick, abundant life and death of other gods and heroes. Constantly seeking new gods, new rituals, it seemed obvious to me that the Beatles were rightful heirs to shamans' traditions, hermaphroditic gods to lead America's youth cults into America's ultimate and massive marketplaces. The Orphic equations are unavoidable. Orpheus as John Lennon, whose wife Cynthia becomes a symbolic Eurydice. Bob Dylan as Orpheus, whose large fame can be likened to a race through Hades. Chuck Berry as Orpheus in the night world of race warfare and sorrow. The Maenads, the Bacchae, are enacted by the predatory female followers, the fans, the fanatics. Huge neon-ringed white whale worlds float not too high above our cities and do a superficial job concealing the dark and complex foundations of our nation. It seemed obvious when I began this work that our popular culture reveals more than it conceals about the condition of our souls, of my soul. I began examining what is famous in America as a way to cite those archetypal inventions peculiar to the land. I became a motley scholar. My systems, charts, plants, schedules were as irregular as my knowledge. Any exciting sequence of information, a new word, a new name, would take me further away from the map of my vision. Reading of angels and animas, mysteries and mandalas, numbers and names made me realize that I could not be taught. I had to learn by examining myself, my origins, my own condition. Some of my friends were skeptical. Popular culture's a monster, a monolithic, hulking glut of trivia. Don't defile your muse with loud music. Listen instead to the dreams of the dead. Give an oriental beard to hide your sewn-up mouth. Grow an oriental beard to hide your sewn-up mouth. One night, a cherished moralist came to our flat to see our newborn daughter, Amanda Rose, and to celebrate Amanda Rose's mother. When I told him that I was writing a book on popular music, he said, "What is it? Isn't it all sex and power? The men look like women and women look like men, or like little girls grimly frozen in eternal childhood. Those squealing teenage girls screaming at guitar-playing baboons just wanted to be fucked. What else? All that pent-up fire. The men grow further from their source, and women are devoured by power-driven machinery, seducing them into living with a false tribal dream of power through the fertility of money. The women are left to contemplate the void. Terrible. What can either give to their children? Many young look upon this time as one of profound betrayal, betrayed by parents who themselves come from betrayal, betrayed daily by a self-mutilating standard of ethics and morals, by a government whose reality seems that of betrayal, betrayed by a Judas economy, betrayed by safety habits of thought-blocking public communications. It is no wonder that the young are easily guided into a Pinocchio carnival which prepares them for their entrance into the world of man. From her dark Puritan garden of thorns, America has taken seeds to sprout a garden of Eden, peopled with a multitude of unsure atoms, perplexed lives, phantom servants, and wax apples. And I want to end with my own poem for David. Isn't that something? So this is the infinite. The infinite is the source of joy. There is no joy in the finite. Only the infinite is their joy. From the Upanishads. The explosion of a bomb silences everything else. The voice of a little child crouched in a stairwell with a stuffed teddy bear. The drop of a coin on the crossroads of mortality. The Saturday night special is a thundering train, a giant sprung from the catacombs of death. We are all what we think and do. The poem is the breath that floats on the currents of broken memories, lives, and dismembered logic in a bed of ashes. Do you think the mother of the one who pulls the trigger, releases the switch, doesn't know the whole story? Rats will eat themselves when it comes down to it, and so will men, even if they do not admit it. All our lives we find ourselves at odds with our fate. We ask ourselves, what is the meaning of life? Yet we never ask, what is the meaning of death? Is the martyr's self-sacrifice our redemption? The hand that pulls our hand from the grave? Men in the sun are heroes. We love what we cannot be. Does the river run uphill? What is life? How can we fill it when we kill it? How can we conquer the land if we cannot even seize the sky? Who does Ukraine belong to? To the little girl crouched under the footprint of a bomb? To the tomb of the unknown soldier? To the empire of hungry ghosts? Thank you. Thank you. Now you can raise it up.
That was terrific. Yeah. And I think I just wanted to note there that since Genny was reading from the beginning of Rock Dow, that beginning section does appear in an issue of Americana. It's a joint issue of Shuffle Boil that David edited with Steve Dickinson. And Americana is the house mag of the bookstore, edited by Nick Whittington, who is here. And just to say, Nick is another one of those guys that could have edited this rather than myself. So next up, we've got Gene Berson. And Gene is a local poet, well, from Grass Valley, correct? Yeah. Yeah, but you were in San Francisco, and I do have a hello to give you, Gene. A hello from Ed Coletti, who you went to SF State with, and I think studied under Creeley back in the day. And Ed emailed and said, hey, say hi to Gene. And Gene is coming up, and he was great friends of David and Julie, and I had a wonderful story about you feeding David oysters out of the shell. So please welcome Gene. And thank you, Gene.
Yeah, that's great because David was up for whatever happened. I brought a bunch of oysters over there on the back porch. Huh? It was? And so we had to open them. So it was a rock, and we banged them and cracked them in the wine, and it was all cool. Well, I got a little overlap here, Genny, so so these a few notes with interspersed quotes. There is a little overlap on them. So this book is a quest. It begins as a quest, with a question, and is answered by a prediction. Is there a way to penetrate the unknown core fixed in America's heart? If there is, it will be the same path leading to the unknown center of my own being. This, then, is a poet's book, a book of myself, made with the self-invented tools of romantic scholarship. I don't really see this as a book. To me, it's more like a spiraled down, wisp through a keyhole in a door into an incandescent mind. It reestablishes sacred connections hidden in commercialized art. It's a picture puzzle of America thrown into the air that comes down as fragmented light from the TV flickering across the face of a man asleep in his Stratolounger. It anoints the backs of homeless people huddled in Market Street doorways to remind us of lives torn apart by circumstance and denied dreams. It picks up starlight in bits of tinfoil roiling in the gutter. It admits the irony of a man in a sleeping bag on O'Farrell Street outside the Hilton, who's scooched up closer to the street light to better read before bed. It is a workbook that stretches linear time around itself, shifts gears on coincidence. Balanced by the accidental, it catches the short-term attention span of those spinning at the top of the spiral. Its themes are archetypes discerned in pop culture and music. Its method is being fearlessly open to the media around us, and it understands that the first step toward sentimentality is a step toward murder. I quote him, "Popular culture reveals more than it conceals about the condition of our souls, of my soul. It began examining what is famous in America as a way to cite those archetypal inventions peculiar to the land. Sacred mysteries play out in contemporary artists like Bob Dylan as Orpheus, whose large fame can be likened to a race through Hades. Chuck Berry as Orpheus in the night world of race warfare and sorrow. The Maenads and Bacchae are enacted by followers, the fans, the fanatics. The young look upon this time as one of profound betrayal, a time of a Pinocchio carnival. The themes in this book, fame, speed, sexual innuendo in magazines, ads, movies, teenage love that often ends in death, obscure connections to the sacred tracings David revives through his intuitive scholarship. He clarifies how they distract us from the sacred mysteries that reunite us with ourselves. He puts his ear to Chuck Berry, James Brown, the Beatles, the Byrds, the Beach Boys, Dionne Warwick, to hear what's coming through them. Their fame, their wealth, their iconic status blunt the ordinary person with brutal hierarchy, defeating the enlivening purpose of art. His form calls attention to silence, the soundless juxtapositions of fragments that make up this collage. I read this book 4 times. The first like a puzzle of America, as I said, thrown into the air. The second I highlighted only David's commentary to hear his insights, how he traveled the labyrinth of pop culture. Then the lyrics, the descriptions of fashion in fashion magazines such as 17, the intrusions of political realities into people's effort to live their lives. And finally, to hear the silence between his selections, the voice of collage itself, the intervals. I'd like to read a section from his piece on James Brown. You can see this. There's a video of it. And I want to read it because it integrates contemporary theater and performance art with ancient shamanic practices. The Big James Brown Band, a ceremonial brass group making sounds of the blown shofar. The drums rumble Babel's foundation. James Brown turns his voice into a police whistle, into the sound of a nerve pulled out of his loins, still spitting its final electrical pulse. Brown and the famous Flames bound onto the TMI show's stage like track stars and don't stop the race until the race is run. They put on a show in a tradition of show giving I was exposed to as a kid. The 10-act vaudeville show, the whole works, magic, acrobats, comedians, dancers. Brown sings a song with a full comprehension of the book of gestures, all the mudras and buddhas essential to the movement of his body and the motion of song. Tie loosened, coat thrown to the floor, retrieved by one of the famous Flames who keeps singing as he stoops to pick it up. Gangster Cagney stances, sweat forms early beneath the rise of his teased turret of glistening curls, the cameras close up to his face to follow his song's agony. Sweat, muscled neck wide, and the efforts of expelling song. Sometimes he moves like a boxer, pushing off his opponent, or stalking him, backing him against the ropes. I think it was back in 1959. He said, darling, you send me. He said to call me. I'll come running back to you. Then Brown sings his first big hit, 1956. Please, 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 oh, please, don't go. Please, please, please don't go, honey. He falls to his knees, holding the mic in his hands like a lover, and wails without restraint in time with the beat. One of the famous Flames, Bobby Byrd, who earlier picked up Brown's discarded sports coat, picks Brown off the floor, takes the mic out of Brown's hand, sets it aright, then leads him tenderly off the stage, draping Brown's checkered sports coat around his heaving shoulders. Brown looks ahead, fierce tragedy in his eyes. Suddenly, Brown snaps around, rushes back to the mic, grabs it like an old-time movie star grabbing a fluttery heroine, and bending her back to kiss her, he falls to his knees and begins screaming and sobbing louder than before. "Baby, you done me wrong. Took my love and now you're gone. Baby, take my hand. Please, please, please don't go." Again, he is picked up off the floor by Bobby Bird and led off stage. Bird's face and bearing revealing brotherly sympathy and compassion. I'm not going to overdo it. I'm just going to read a little bit of this is a poem that I imagine was written about the time he was writing Rock Dow, or real close to it. He, as you know from the book, he listened to AM radio, you know, KDIA and KNEW and all that. And this catches that. The Red Shoes. And I woke up dancing, out of bed past kids crying in clusters. Mine, hers, anybody else's. Piled up, writhing, howling, steamy, cracked windows, stink of ancient diapers, sour milk, cartoon, rat whiskers, crushed, raggedy, broken Fisher-Price homes, uncoiled rabbits, Legos, Tonka trucks, Pacific mold on the windowsills, crowing black-green alphabet dots, burst to spread and mark monk white walls crazed with Crayola faces. And I danced. Down the hallway, leapt over the dogs and cats hunting each other for food, who turned to attack me like a cour de ballet. But I was dancing, and I had never danced before. Music from all the radios propelled me into and out of rooms where my lives erased, and I leapt into space free of sorrow or thought or art. And she pleaded with me to take her with her. But I said no, it wouldn't work. I dance alone, and the radios are behind me. And she said, "Will you leave me with the kids, the rooms, the TV, broken down kitchen, nothing works, muggers, robbers, raiders, clawing at door windows, doors, windows, snipers, vipers, pirates oozing through old keyholes, gurus, prophets, healers, Jehovah's Witnesses, fisting the front door into tissue?" "Yes, yes," I yelled, dancing past her down the hall. "Yes, yes, the radio's behind me and before me, music more conclusive than the sun." And I danced down Russian Hill into North Beach. Old nicotine ivory Italian gentlemen, young Italian silk misogyny, beatnik survivors, tubbed in jukebox coffins, drunk on history and hippie holdout New Age hobos, piss at the world passing by, bent over double in doorway zoos. And I dance past Broadway's whores, tattered bare butt blushing with belt welts, ravaged vagina overlit, handheld camera, porno film house aisles. I dance down. Break movie dreamer meditation, breaking through the tough screen, leap a Nijinsky onto a rope, sandbag through iron exit door into day. Dance into city lights. Microcosm, feudal culture. Everyone's a poet, but I dance. Everyone's an editor, but I dance. Everybody has a book nobody reads, and I dance. down an alley into Chinatown, attacked by teenage Bruce Lee mafia, karate, and 38s, but I leap higher than Confucius, who didn't dance from his hut, his palace, his systems of etiquette. I dance to the city radio. Chien Shenai symbol, dragon smash, traffic, cardiogram, chopped off chicken heads, trout scales scraped away, crushed, boiled crab shell crunch, ladle dale pork barbecue from stainless steel trays into takeout cardboard cartons, white porcelain, Kuan Yin cracks apart, falls on marble bank of Canton floor, cameras on tourists like goiters. Everyone's amazed when I dance over dim sum trays in black acrobatic slippers. I need no food. I'm fueled by dance. Radios are in front and back. They're in my ears. My mouth is a radio. Everything I see and hear is music. Everything I say, everything is music I dance to. Dance to a mad speed babbler's rap, tapping like crazy. Honey Coles, hold your hat. Fred, watch out. Better believe it, Bubbles. And no trace of sweat, and no thought, and no art. And true to each second, my body moves over the fallen and the arising. It would be indulgent to read one little one of mine.
Oh, yeah, no.
So, oyster. Well, about the oysters. Two vantage points opened up for me 5 or 6 years ago or so. The first came in the form of new friends that felt like old friends. And the other, their back porch, overlooking a softly curving street in the Oakland Hills, a friendly, neighborly street, lit by congenial street lamps below us, seemingly from simpler times. Sprays of light beamed beneath them. Oh, look, the fog came in while we'd been talking. We'd lost track of time. From this vantage point of huddled space on the gray landing of a back porch, we not only viewed afternoons, sunsets, stars, summer and winter, but also watched the news. Police helicopters spiraled their own beams of twitching searchlights to the streets, tracking Berkeley protesters that emerged after the racial killings in Missouri and New York. 3 aircraft, like tiny errant Christmas lights, molecules of fear and threat, lifted aloft, buoyed by a generous budget for fuel and overtime pay, just in time for Christmas. In our world of deception and strategies of disguise, friends are rare. Police helicopters look so pretty, twinkling red and green in the night sky. So it's not without a certain wary joy that I share our perspective from these 2 vantage points, friendship and a back porch. I do so to offset ominous surveillance. Poets can create antidotes of laughter and love out of anything. We rigged up a sun umbrella to shade us, and then used it to fly over the rooftops like Chagall lovers. The Improbable Umbrella, for Julie Rogers and David Meltzer. The sun umbrella chafes at the bolt, twists to twirl, to fly off. Bay wind yanks at her skirts. She spins, breaks loose. She's over Tamalpais, still attached to the house. Friends seated on the fantail of the USS back porch are underway. They laugh at the tumult, check everything out. The smoking deck. Hey, bridge lights maintain their distance even as we sail away. Polished agates rock on the rotting railing, reflect sunset clouds. Ice slips in a glass. Xylophonic tonic. They yak and pry off their ash on the ashtray of brass. Everything they say is meant to be. They tilt on the waves, the master, the mistress, the man with a drill, acolytes of the view, over which they have little control, lifted aloft by a blue umbrella. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Gene. That was really nice. It was good, and I like that the tone you took in that review at the beginning part. That was the kind of review I like. Yeah, it's a nice way to place Rockdow in the moment, because I do think it's a book that's totally relevant to today still, in our contemporary moment. So next up is going to be Aganita Fox Hershman, and her late husband Jack Hirschman is a very missed poet on the scene. And I just wanted to mention him in relation to Tree and David, because they were buddies going back from the 70s all the way up. And Hirschman's all over Tree. And Agneta's a wonderful poet in her own right as well. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I knew David long before I actually met him. He was in my house on the bookshelves when I then lived with my late partner, Asa Benveniste, who was a very close friend of David, as well as Jack was. The three of them, in fact, the triumvirate of three men. I'm going to first start with two poems I wrote all by myself and dedicated to David. And the reason I'm reading two poems is kind of obvious in the first poem. And thank you, Julie, for inviting me and finding that poem that is mentioned in there. Dear David, in memory of David Meltzer, I lost the poem I wrote you many years ago, the only copy I had of Dancing Syllables. The day after you died, I read it in a New Year's Day celebration. I must have put it on the table and somehow it got crumpled up with the rest of that shitty year. Ever since, I can't stop thinking about it, trying to remember some of the lines, but all I end up with is a long empty corridor with closed doors, just like the feeling I have of you no longer being here in person. I just know that behind those doors lie the gift you left, the memories of you dancing through those syllables, those words, clinking them together so smoothly, so roughly, melodiously in and out of sync, just like that fat Cossack you slimmed down in your poems before you released them so elegantly, wittily, a solo trumpeter in the night, and that mischievous smile of yours making light out of darkness, bending your ear to the silliest things, turning them on their head, putting it in its place, offbeat, to the point, giggling out of every corner of your brain, tossing the whole goddamn idiocy of this and that conundrum of life's little foibles, turning them into gems. The doors in that corridor begin to open. There is so much light coming through the tree of life, and the bird on every branch singing your songs, and through it all, your eyes, those eyes, as always, smiling. And then Julie sent me Dancing Syllables, which I'd given David in 2011. dancing syllables for David. In that melodious first thought, caught in the throat, words line up like good little soldiers on their coffee break. Your darting mind enters, takes it turns, giggling it all the way to the horde of words, releasing them slowly from their vaults, degreasing them, making them clink. A kind of symphony takes shape, backwards and upwards, maybe more like a blues or something to blow out, bubble-like, going hither and thither, jumping with joy. All those syllables, roughly smooth, begin to get homesick and wonder thoughtfully what the point is. The point, to juggle and zimzum, Chaplanesky, cane and all, in everyday mortality, pull death up by its bootstraps, and, as Leonard Cohen says, dance them all the way to love. And pardon the cliche, for it doesn't know how to fit in, just plucks at those old strings until a double rainbow appears and greets you from a podium of deep thought and vision, leaving us chuckling long after the curtain has fallen. I'm just going to read a very short excerpt from this, and it's kind of almost at random, but maybe not. You know, like the Beatles say, you can't buy me love, and so on. The creative capitalist is one of who makes us forget that we are supporting him. Like all gods, the Beatles sing for their supper. They're in it for the money. Wealth is the ultimate in contemporary Western hagology. Our myth never tires substantiating success, but using that Gilgit counter that measures cash. The story of gods is also the story of divine capitalism. Religion is the history of corporations. According to the gospel, we must earn whatever we want, whatever we need must be, one way or the other, paid for. Men support their habits. Only during the moments of revolt or creation is man not addicted or habit-bound. Yet successful revolts laid the ground for new habits, a network of new obligations, new dues paid out to the same old union. The revolution is over as soon as your face, as Genny said earlier, is printed on sweatshirts worn by the young. Maybe not the most cheerful of the excerpts.
Thank you, Aggie. Those were wonderful poems. Thank you. And I apologize about Asa. I should have mentioned him. I just don't know that history that well. Okay, but and he also appears in some tree things, I think. Yeah, and so I should have mentioned both. Yeah, but everybody should be aware of that. And that end of the quote is wonderful. It's sad, but it's so true that the revolution is over when your name appears on a sweatshirt. And what was David thinking in '65? I feel like, because to me that's Che Guevara, and Che wasn't on a sweatshirt yet. So that trips me out. And then just back here, I saw a book titled "The Revolution Is in the Air," and who's on the spine but Bob Dylan, who appears heavily quoted in Rockdale. And in the back of Rockdale, there was these appendixes went on forever, or addendums, as I say, which you can say the plural, by the way, addendums. So, yeah, it can be addendums. And in the back of that, David had attached this really lengthy interview with Dylan. And I didn't include that just because it was out of a newspaper, and it was just a really long interview. But just to put that out there. So next up, we have Neely Cherkovski. And just to say, this book wouldn't have happened without Neely. He was the original impetus that reached out to me and reached out to Lithic, Danny, and Kyle, and said, hey, like Lithic should do a book of David. And so I gave some options, and this is the one that Danny felt really tied with and excited about. And they've done a beautiful job. And so it's wonderful to have Neely come up and read. Thank you, Neely. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Indeed. Ha. Indeed.
Do you want to sit or do you want to stand?
Maybe I'll sit.
Yeah, you can sit.
Ooh. That's quite a long way up those stairs.
It is.
So, Lithic Press is in.
How's the mic, everybody?
How's the mic? Is that fine or?
Okay.
Lithic Press is in Fruta, Colorado, which is about 15 miles north of Grand Junction. It was once its own little town. It's now like a farming community. It's now like, it still is sort of, but it's a bedroom community for Grand Junction now. And there's Lithic Bookstore, second floor. It's like a Burton Beckett in the Midwest. It has a huge poetry section, gigantic, big section of books on the local flora and fauna and all that. And it has the boss, Danny Rosen, and his hardworking editor, Kyle Harvey, who also designs the books. And Rock Dow was obviously a labor of love. And now they're doing Gregory Corso's The Golden Dot. And I'm happy to say my selected poems in sometime next year. So you go back there in that little town and you see that bookstore. It's just quite amazing. And there's a real lethal coffee shop not far. They make great, strong coffee, you know. They do a lot of books. So I was thinking what I'm going to write. I wrote a poem yesterday, which I'm not going to read, which was about, one of the images was David and I and Julie going up to reading in Grass Valley. David and I were reading, and we stopped at the, I don't smoke. Well, actually, I smoke a pipe, but we stopped at a restaurant, and I remember they're smoking outside, and they were smoking in the lobby. And then we have dinner, and they're smoking in the lobby again, they're smoking outside again. It was quite amazing. But David was someone I could always go to when I was feeling bad. I'd say, David, how many times I went to that house, Julie, in that balcony? David, I'm in fear of so many things. It'll be all right, Neely. And he'd say that so much, so often. And then at New College, people say, what was the best thing at New College? It was David Meltzer, because that's where we became friends. And one day he asked me to take over his class. He was sick, and he developed laryngitis. He was gone 5 days, and he came back, and I was in the middle of a talk on Williams, I believe, and David came in and started talking. He talked for an hour on the idea of silence, of being forced to listen to yourself, because he couldn't speak, to go into your own mind. It was quite amazing. And ever since then, I wish I'd had my tape recorder going, because it was just so beautiful. So instead, I wrote a poem called Poets to David Meltzer. From a bed of nettles on the lower slope of Mount Analog, poets fit to kill. You recognize graceful gestures, modest self-will. What is poetry? I don't know. What is rain? Poetry is not prose. It blooms like a single rose painted in the air. You may care, but poetry simply lives. Oh, youth culture, rock and roll, electrify your fuse. Who is a poet? This delving dawn, does she whisper fragments? The Tao rages and roars, music rocks, stands, lyrical sunlight yokes overland. The Tao is a poem, Beach Boys bleed. Who is a poem? Simply prayer, a Greek lady with bow and lyre. When I visited Lao Tzu, the planet was new. Redwood trees gathered and marigolds grew. Give thanks to old Ez, gnarled and tragic. What makes the poet a master of magic? Music do me music. From relentless clouds encouraged by ocean, poets bring a pit of bones, speak proverbs, and throw stones. Demons jump on board, out of work prophets come to town. An epic poem is a horse, your haiku a well-tempered sword. You never know, because poets are more lasting than landowners and personnel managers. The farm disappears, poetry shifts gears. The poet grows younger in his years. Over rugged plots and empty city lots, through pale patriotic parades and inaugural verse, come poets who pen odes to Neanderthal and Byzantine schism. The poets in boots of Spanish leather from the day's dreams of never. Poets lie for a reason. They accept distraught words littered on our walls and our walks to the river, past home of merchants and gold speculators. We strive to deliver parcels to vacant lots. Turn away, stop desire, rest your palms on Sappho's lyre. Poets, do you have a fever? Did you die? Are you due for a rainbow in the morning sky? Does Rumi ring a bell? Perhaps Shakespeare lives in hell. Have you a secret poem to declare? Down from the mountainside, Ginsberg and Corso visiting Bukowski in the company of Edna St. Vincent Millay. David pens When I Was a Poet in the meadowland of letters. The sun has no poetry, moonlight does no better. Spin a sonnet round your tongue. Poets march past the old hardware store. Why not write a best-selling novel or paint a great work of art? Poetry is for MFA classes and nervous men in fear of themselves. Poets pass a pit of bones. They throw letters in the sky, for they die in splendor on a bier in the forest of our muse. Thank you.
Can make it? Okay. All right.
Right on, Neely.
Some of that was almost poetic.
That was delightful, Neely. Thank you so much. Okay, so next up is going to be Marina Lazzara. And I just wanted to say a note. With Marina and Nick Whittington, we added a New College Poetics Anthology, and there's going to be an event for it April 13th. And there's some flyers up at the desk and posted. And on those flyers, there's a discount code. It's ridiculously expensive, but it has all sorts of unpublished stuff, including a lecture of David's, lecture notes that David gave at New College in the 80s, which are fantastic. And the poet Robert Duncan, unpublished lecture notes by him as well. It still costs like $50 with the discount, but it's just FYI, there's a great discount code there. And Marina wrote a wonderful afterword for Rockdow, which I'm very appreciative of. And she is, again, another person that should have edited this other than myself. Come on up.
Thank you.
And you wanted to sit?
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
You're okay for that?
Yeah, I'm okay. I said, Patrick, I didn't bring my copy. He goes, don't worry, you'll find one on stage. I also just want to say, Aggie, that I heard it's your birthday, and I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Yes, yesterday. I know, hard one. Yay. Thank you. Is this okay where I'm sitting? I'm not going to say too much. I might read it all. I may not. I may skip a couple quotes. But I didn't write. Started writing this and wrote most of it before reading Rockdow. Patrick did a memorial on the dispatches from the Poetry Wars. He asked a lot of us to write a memorial on this e-zine. And I tried to write it for that. But you know what? There's 3 other great essays on there by Garrett Caples, Micah Ballard, and Nicholas Whittington. So it didn't need this essay. Those are 3 great essays. So you should go and read them. And then Patrick asked me, and thank you, Patrick. I think I put one little quote from Rockdow in there. David was my teacher. And I'm just going to read. Tonal Aura, David Meltzer and the Poetics of Collage. History is a creative act of the present. That's a quote by my friend Chris Carlson, who has a local called Shaping San Francisco. Check it out. It's a local history project online. It's about how we all are making history always. David in my apartment near the plywood desk reciting When I Was a Poet, my dog at his feet and the tiny Victorian studio filled like a concert hall. Kids there with ears able to grasp city imagery, the everyday. The adults in the gray area between the lines in the hallway. He reads from the book, but in conversation with us, storytelling, legacy, and laughter. I attend a house reading with David. The host has no real interest in poetry or jazz. He is offering his home to his poet friend. David scans the bookshelf as we enter. As we hang our coats, David finds an endearing way to include the host. At dinner, during a moment of poets chewing, he asks about the man's interest in fishing, which baits he prefers, which hooks. The child of a comedic writer, David hooks a wordplay or two about a big catch. Tossing back the injured. The poets talk fishing. David was a mirror and a receptor, a reflector and a sponge. He was the ultimate collagist, one who picks up the pieces, finds gum wrappers and old matchbooks, and glues them together to form a star. In conversation with David, the writer and educator Christopher Winks, referring to David's editing of the anthologies Birth, Death, Reading Jazz, and Writing Jazz, describes by asking, "You're making a new work out of all these quotes." David responds, "True. I was inspired by Walter Benjamin's desire to write a book by gathering texts together that told the story he would discover in the collage. He wouldn't have to write anything. Instead, he would let fragments cohere into a unified text. Reading Jazz used a polyvocal approach in a rigid, polemic way. There was no give or take there, no complexity." I think I'm going to go to this side. I tell David I hate writing prose. It's like pulling a tapeworm from my stomach through my mouth. He says, "Everything I write is poetry. There's no difference. If it's all poetry, then let it be. If you hear poetry, then write a poem." What exhales through the language of David Meltzer's writing, no matter what form it takes, is a collage of perception, a kaleidoscope. Like his dear friend Wallace Berman's credo, art is love is God. A collage in words itself, whereas collage serves as an analogy, is a reconfiguring of connection, reminiscent of Arthur Rimbaud's disordering of the senses. David writes, vision. The heart sees what the mind sees, what the eyes see differently. I didn't know David was a musician when I began my studies with him. I didn't know much about him. He seemed like a nerdy scholar with an odd sense of humor and a music buff, a thrifty guy. As a teacher, he never talked about himself or his work. As I get to know him and his life, I discovered the albums Poet Song and Serpent Power. I began to read the anthologies and the introductions to those books. He was drawing together chopped up pieces of inspiration from his mentors and friends, along with his reading and music work, combining all of that with his everyday life as a pedestrian, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a teacher, as someone who loves humankind and collects evidence of that love. There was something uniquely inspiring in David's absolute humanism, a poetics. I work with David on his book, Talking with the Poets. I record and transcribe the interviews. He calls me several times and leaves the same message until I return his call. Leave in every every sigh, every like. Try to capture every mispronounced word and don't leave out one breath. As a teacher, David's pedagogy was anti-scholarship, where reading and writing is the act of knowledge, not arduous research and bureaucracy, a content treadmill of creation toward a collective history. David in his, I'm just going to skip some quotes, you guys. All myth, David writes in Rocktow, begins as news. David's already in the classroom. When the first student arrives, he takes a taxi from the East Bay, has the same taxi driver every time. He enters and sets up his big bound books that seem heavier than himself, especially in his hobbled existence shortly after hip surgery. Students assemble. He dissembles the bound books, pulls out particular pages. They are leaves. They are angels. They are just paper. The students talk that conversation that inevitably gets louder and waves between silence and a sound that becomes murmur as people make connections or wear off caffeine, fight a bit to be heard over the person behind them. David looks through his papers patiently, turning over, turning and placing to the left, topping that with another. Slight swaying sounds, slightly winded and soundful pages. He occasionally answers a question or greets someone as people walk to their seats. He throws torn glossy magazine pages and watches them slide down the table like dinner plates. Automatically, the students pass them down, spreading them around the tabletop so they won't cover one another. They are ads for cars, for fashion, ads with high heels and cleavage and lace bras, ads for movies, for insurance, for college degrees, ads for health insurance. There's a natural lull in conversation as the students help to lay out the pages, and then silence, some breathing, concentration. David says, "Hello." Then a David giggle, which includes a hand to his chin, holding it like the neck of a guitar. The pages in front of you, there's a bit of a stir in the room. The pages in front of you are examples of poetry. Choose one. Tell me why. We giggle. Someone says, "You mean anti-poetry?" No, David says, "These advertisements use language and imagery in the same manner as the poet." David mentions some obvious literary techniques, graphic design, obvious critical thinking analogies, says it can't be dichotomized. One of his catchphrases, urging us on to think not only outside the box, but inside the layers of wood that connect the frame, to begin to tear up the pages, to begin to reassemble, collage. He continues to suggest technique, rhythm of color, various seemingly unrelated images brought together, designed to influence, seduction by visual sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. That was really wonderful. And we got a couple more readers, so I apologize for the length, but it's just wonderful to be able to have folks be here. The next reader is Micah Ballard, who's a very dear friend of mine, and who, again, is somebody that easily could have edited this, and who worked at New College and knew David very, very well, much better than I did, I would say, and shared a very personal friendship with him. Micah, what's going on? Where are you? All right, come on. He's on the back hanging out, which is where I like to be too. All right, not up here. All right, so Micah Ballard.
Yeah. Love this poet. Thank you all. Okay, here I am. Thank you, everyone. I love you, David. Julie, everybody, for being here in support of David. I wanted to, well, you know what happens when these type of readings, like you type things up and then everybody reads what you read, or, you know? I mean, yeah, closer, I'll get there. And so then you have to do it on the fly. And so I was thinking, luckily I brought blue rags. David and I hung out together a lot at New College, and I had like a lot of these hardbacks. But when Eric had the shop over there, when Bird and Beckett was over there was a David tribute, and the same thing happened. And so I read David's work backwards, just last line or first line, and he heard about it, and he was like super stoked on it, just because I didn't have anything else to pick out. So I'm going to read this one forwards, because the last time, it was like 2005 or something, anyway. And then I'll just jump into Rocktile. Slow to go against it, the word, the page, marks on the white, my whole life marked by words. Slow to go against it, to go against their hard shapes, to wound the page with metal, holes in the paper, I wave in your face. We follow each other, I am behind you at night, you're behind me when I stand up to leave. We face each other on the page. This has already been read, but what I did is it's chronological with Rocktile. So it's Aleph for David, Dog, the Lion, chronological with Rocktile that Pat edited, and Marina and Nick. 26, 43, 47, 49, 50, 51, 63, 64, 87, 109, 95. That's where these poems come from. But Genny, I already did this one and I loved it. But I'll start with just a couple of lines. I kill a fly. Transistor radio blares in my head through a plastic earphone. Love is an itching in my heart, sings Diana Ross of the Supremes. Non-sacramental wine mixes with bread and cheese in my innards. The man who lives above me paces back and forth. I am clogged, and I sit here before a writing machine to tell you how God haunts these godless times. Is fame speed? I tell my wife that we are famous to each other, and our children are famous too. To us, as we are famous to them. Isn't that enough? But even in the family, a structure, hierarchy, division of angels, order is based on comprehension of it. What is famous? That what we worship, an idea we wish to serve and ascend to? What do we worship? Gods or heroes? What's the difference? What makes up for sameness? What is an artist? Why do I question? Why do you question? To order, to clarify, to maintain intelligence, to be able to live with people independent of worship, to challenge and to submit. Is fame an assumption in accord with an assumption already made? Is it faith or lack of it? The hero is speed, pursuit. The hero moves, speed. Time is memory of it. Music is time, a them fragment, a few sung words, and one remembers a specific moment gone. Time is the evidence of loss. Song reduces the collective dream to the most recognizable substance. What is complex in a time? The form of a time's dream is partially known in songs. Time is the realization of destruction. It is also the awareness of creation's process. The heart needs regular demolition. We submit to the heroic because the heroic is what we possibly are. The song challenges nothing. It fills in all the gaps. It's a tool for the creation of memory. JFK's murder began his true leadership. We worship lost youth more than we do ancient wisdom and thrive on both public and private sacrifices. Kennedy is worshipped for what he might have been. The unknown is the basis of religion. Speculation is the dream pivot. Anybody might possibly be he who was not or he who might have been. Poetry is today's expression, a mirror of our times. It keeps pace with tomorrow's rocket to Mars, yet it safeguards our heritage. I've had a fever ever since this morning, Jean Cocteau said. And should I say that Edith Piaf's death has made it hard for me to breathe? Cocteau died 2 hours later. You make a rose afraid to grow. You make the wind forget to blow. You make the sun up and the sky forget to shine, and you're driving me out of my mind now. Number 14, Voodoo Woman, Bobby Goldsboro. Heroes who submit to worship are failures. We also worship failure. Today is a time of all time and of no time. I speed through it, holding a thread of history. I sit in the middle of it, and it sounds like the earth turning. All that has preceded me is before me, evidence everywhere. We assemble our histories continuously. Allowances are based on parental income. One can assume how parents compete between themselves in affording their children the highest allowance on the block, and how their children's allowance will become a status symbol for the parents as well as the children. To consume is also to be consumed. Again, fire. Great pharaohs gathered their loot together to die with it. The gold, the fine cloths, the carvings, trinkets, cutlery, etc., held sacred powers and were essential for the journey towards Isis. But the children, with their abundance of stuff and goods, glide into unreal adulthood. The consuming mania is a reflection of the adult world they live within, seeking understanding, a connection with their elders. The adolescent attempts to emulate them, but what doctrine their peers offer do not fill the void. Suddenly the youth is a young adult, married, no plans for children, living in a recent low-budget tract home, new car bought on time, as well as the essential TV and other appliances. They both work. Meet in the morning, meet again at night. The purpose of their cooperative venture is vaguely satisfied on weekends where they can go shopping for new objects for their home, whose ceiling is beginning to welt and the termites can be heard at night through the cheap wood beams. The river runs into the sea, and the sea stretches out as far as the eye can see. Trained to be consumers before we were born by parents who are consumers, our very birthings are now, as a rule, performed automat style on hospital assembly lines that do everything and package and label the newborn infant. Birth has been reduced to the production of consumer goods. Abortion is still illegal, perhaps because a potential consumer is destroyed. Babies being born and unborn in the frenetic, silent movie speed of today's young. What is morale? Whose ethic forbids abortion? What law is the true law? Times go by so fast, the code still unbroken. Those left will be those who could sit still and wait and abide with faith in their natural ability to grow. Smoking into New Orleans. Somebody help me get out of Louisiana, just to help me get to Houston town. There are people there who care a little about me, and they won't let a poor boy down. Sure as you're born, they brought me a silk suit, they put luggage in my hand, and woke me up high over Albuquerque on a jet to the promised land. No straight line out, all assumptions circular. Thanks so much.
So wonderful. Thanks, Micah. And so next up is Sara Menefee. Sara, yeah, okay, cool. I was nervous you weren't here, but I thought I saw you out there. Okay, awesome. And I just want to say to introduce Sara, who probably doesn't need an introduction, but Sara.
I'd like to hear what you say.
Okay. Yeah, Lithic sent out review copies and blurb copies, and Sara wrote back, and hers really made me cry. Like, I was at work reading what she wrote. No, but you made me tear up. Like, beautiful and lovely, and like so heartfelt and right on. And also, Sarah, I mean, just to say, like, you're our favorite poet for me and my friends. I know, like, everybody in San Francisco that lives here, that knows me, and writes poetry, loves your work.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God, it's such an honor to be part of this. This is beautiful. David, what can you even say? I'm not even trying. David was a friend for going on 40 years. You know, he was always there with a word that you needed to hear. And David went through a lot of grief, hardship, pain, and rise. Always on top of that was his radiance. He also taught me that, I was going to say this better, but what I learned from David and from life a little bit was that the humor that's infused with love is the greatest art. It was beautiful to hear his poem Red Shoes read. That's one of my favorite poems of all time. It's one of the things that reminds me of why I still love living here in this city. So, okay. Good white wine, but I'm still on my hind legs. So, I'm going to read this from page 59, a couple of pages. This is about what was going on, whether we were paying attention or not. David certainly was in our psyche in this country. Woo! It's growing. Every day it grows a little more than it was the day before. My love for you just grows and grows. Oh, 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 how it grows and grows. And where it's going to stop, I'm sure nobody knows. It's growing, the temptations. Whatever it is not what it seems to be. Change is a burning, a triumph above flame, like the phoenix reborn. Fire, the burning Buddhist monks of Vietnam, Giacometti, the sculptor. Quote, but the thing, the suicide that really fascinates me is burning oneself alive. That would be something. Fire renews what it destroys. The burning man alive with fire. David Schmuck races over a hill to escape its pain and embrace its spirit. D.H. Lawrence, the emblem of the fever of his tuberculosis. Fire turns the meat of flesh to fragile ash, lightening the ponderous massivenesses of the body into particles taken up by the wind or slowly eaten by the earth. Fire suicides are becoming more frequent in America. This was 1965. Yesterday, a Marine immolated himself because he was deeply unhappy about Marine doctrine and training. A few months ago, an elderly lady in Detroit ignited herself because she was outraged by the American war effort in Vietnam. Speech as fire, art as fire, flames heat as a cleansing power, fire as a baptismal rite. The pyromaniac, the ecstatic. Puberty is a blaze of birth. The body is ablaze with growing. The spirit is flaming and its fire illuminates the edges of night. The inner heat creates a raw nerve, screaming torment, boiling the heart. The loins plunge into lake water to cool. A plume of stream shoots from the phallus into the water that holds it up in watery gravity. Ye wavering forms draw near again as ever, when ye long since moved past my clouded eyes, to hold ye fast shall this time endeavor, does my heart still strange illusion prize. From Faust, Goethe. A man inside the youth's body stretches within the boy's form. Alchemic and chemic fluids erupt in bust inside the tortured body. Skin explodes into pimples, welts, blackheads, acne, whiteheads. Hair grows on flesh once smooth, a pubic jungle on the crotch. Behind and before him is the female. Before heroic acts and after them awaits a female, moving ahead, turning the corner, pulling her shadow behind like the train of an evening gown. Body and spirit seek fulfillment from the creative principle, necessary polarity, essential duality. No new vision, yet clearing a sight reveals the depths of the old vision. Puberty is also the bringing forth of first vision central to his life's duration, acknowledged or not. Body bulges, drains, becomes lean, gets fat, where fat is foolish. And all the mirrors, magic or real, cannot aid or distract time's work. So I'm going to read a little more along that line. Okay, where am I? Oh, here we are. What an amazing book. I was just astonished when this came in the mail. It's like, oh, David. Okay. My childhood sweetheart lived around the corner. I went over there one afternoon to make her laugh, to bug her, to make my presence known. She was on the cement front porch, standing in the center of a circle formed by her 4 best girlfriends. They were whispering, incanting about their first menstruation, uttering whispered warnings and prophecies about bizarre pregnancies, weird homunculi, unaccounted for protrusions, obstructions. I sat away from them looking at the street, a parked Packard sedan, listening to the sounds of a rite. How different my sweetheart looked in the circle's center, her voice unknown to my memory. In sequence, each of her 4 girlfriends would turn to look at me and then quickly return to the chanting of initiatory hymns. Such strange looks. Not being able to move, I sat there, kicking the stoop with the back of my heel and feeling a particularly male inadequacy. Can we not see that it matters not whether a man has learned of the path from the teachings of Krishna, or of the Buddha, or of Muhammad, or Zoroaster, or of the Christ, provided he but set his foot upon the path? It is all one to our common Father. From Fragments of a Faith Forgotten, G.R.S. Mead. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara, and thanks everybody for sticking around. It's over now, and so you can chill out. I just wanted to say in closing that what Sara just read shows how much this book is so much of David that, I mean, personally, I just felt like he kind of held back at times, and this book is David full on. It's really rad, and you can unfold everything he taught at New College and elsewhere is in this book in a lot of ways. So much is in this book. It's I mean, regardless of my participation, this book's rad. So thanks. Copies up here are for sale. So please feel free to grab one and pay at the front. And again, everything outside is free. And if these disappear, you can always, Eric is happy to take requests and he'll ship it to you. And I think he said he'd pay the shipping. So see Eric if these run out. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Can I say something? I'm going to actually be an intro. I just want to say Patrick has been all night for all of his hard work. And for the last 5 or 6 years, he's been working so hard on the New College anthology as well as on this book. And I just want to honor Patrick for all his hard work. And no one else could have done it but Patrick. So thank you. Sorry.
not kidding. The similarities are uncanny.